It's the stuff that they don't talk about is the stuff that tells you about who somebody really is.
We all think we're Hollywood stars and we all think we're Hollywood producers. How we can ensure that we both create the environments in which that entertainment factor is high on the list, but yet single in on exactly what the objective of what a marketer is here to do.
You're always thinking about who you're trying to reach. Who are these people? Produce the content specifically for that audience.
Hi everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Places We'll Go show. Now today we're really deep diving into the world of TV hit formats and what we as marketers can learn from the entertainment industry's greatest storytelling minds.
If you look at your career, you've been at the heart of creating some of the most amazing shows. What can marketing learn from the emotions that you pull on in producing these amazing shows?
If you want emotion, you really do need people to be.
Now our guest is the brilliant and fearless Izzie Pick Ibarra, a showrunner, creative force and format whisperer behind global TV hit shows like Strictly Come Dancing, Dancing with the Stars and The Masked Singer, and so many more. You can't think about how that then works through over time, or maybe you can, maybe there is a formula.
We don't put people together by accident.
When you're talking about the Barbie movie, they spent as much on the marketing as they did on the movie. Now this episode is a masterclass in storytelling, production, and why the biggest opportunity for brands today lies in long-form, character-led content. And what kind of skill sets would you have to be able to manage that environment?
I had no training in television. I've learnt just on.
So today's episode is of course brought to you by two fantastic organisations. The first, Studio Space, a leading on-demand marketing agency platform. This enables marketers to browse and brief agencies, receive proposals and start work all in one place. It's literally like having your own agency network at your fingertips, without the hassle, as they take care of everything from contracting, invoicing, procurement to legal. So check out Studio Space today. Our other sponsor, of course, is the Marketing Skills Trust, a charity whose mission is to make the marketing industry a better place, providing grants to help create a more equitable industry and help us to level up. The Marketing Skills Trust has been instrumental in championing a more inclusive, diverse and open marketing industry. You can find out more by going to their website. Okay, let's get on with the show. Hi everybody, I'm super excited to be with Izzy today. Now I've actually seen Izzy present before, so I know we're in for an absolute treat. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say Izzy's a creative genius. And so when we were talking about what we should cover today, she had a great idea, which was that we should cover this in acts. So this is the true producer coming through. And so without further ado, we're going to get started with Act 1, which is the unexpected overlap. So Izzy, fantastic to have you with us here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm very honoured.
Yeah, well, it's going to be a treat, I know for sure. So let's get started. So we're talking about, in this act, the overlap between marketing and TV production. So what made you first realise that there was this overlap in existence?
So what first made me realise was my brother, who is this sort of very, very curious, not curious in a strange way, but curious mentally, marketeer, and who came out of Unilever and has his own experiential agency, Hot Pickle. And he has been sort of nudging me for a few years and saying that he really felt that we were, doing kind of similar jobs, which is that we are all trying to, capture the attention of audiences with very engaging content, and we're trying to keep those audiences. And ultimately, those are the same goals that, say, a producer has, as does somebody in marketing. And so I just started looking around a little bit more at what that meant, because we know that the sort of 30-second commercial has sort of gone, which is bad for all of us in many ways, isn't it? It's for TV, it's meant that there's no money to make shows anymore. Well, the money certainly has, gone down significantly. And I guess in marketing, it is that, how does a brand really grab its audience nowadays and keep them sitting there patiently and very subserviently through a 30-second commercial? You now have to reach your consumer, who is really a viewer or, an audience. And how do you do that? So I think we all have the same goal and we all have the same challenges. So that was what sort of got me thinking about all of it. And I think, one of the things is that producers, we do understand how to entertain audiences because we have to do that on a big scale. We understand how to keep audiences in a show. How do you keep somebody watching 44 minutes of content and make sure that they're going to come back for more? And, I think it's looking at content for marketing and for brands now in a very sort of similar way, which is, thinking very specifically about your audience and how are you going to reach that particular audience, how are you going to keep them engaged, and really that's via emotion. You've got to make them feel something. So it doesn't matter if a show is extremely flashy, which some of the shows I've worked on are, but that's not why necessarily they work. They work because there's story and, stories of redemption and transformation and, emotion, and you feel something when you're watching them. And that is the big goal.
Izzy, I've got a pet peeve here, right? And the thing that marketers tend to do is we all think we're Hollywood stars and we all think we're Hollywood producers, and then forget sometimes the fundamental difference between perhaps entertainment from a TV show perspective, and that the objective of what marketing is here to do, which is ultimately to grow our brands and sell more stuff. Yeah. And I wonder if you have then a perspective about how we can ensure that we both create the environments in which that entertainment factor is sort of high on the list to maintain attention, but yet single in on exactly what the objective of what a marketer is here to do versus just simply entertain.
That's a good question. So I guess that if you've got what we do when we start with a show is think, okay, who is the show for? Who is the audience? What is the network? What is their demographic? So you're always in mind, you're always thinking about who you're trying to reach. Now, in my case, I've had to reach 20 million people, if you don't mind, of a Tuesday. And so then I'm thinking very big and broad. But with the casting of the people on the show, you're thinking about very specific demographics. And I think that's really the same thing, isn't it? So you're trying to, if you're marketing a product, it's like, well, who actually buys your product? Like, what age are these people? Where do they live? And are they, consuming content that's short form? Are they a younger generation in a more short form world? Or do they want long form? Are they female? Are they male? Who are these people? And then you've got to really, I think, produce the content specifically for that audience. There's no point really doing a load of TikToks for a bunch of women and, over the age of 55. Because the likelihood is they're not naturally on TikTok. They might be, some of them, but there's a huge chunk that are not. And similarly, if you're really trying to reach that sort of much younger audience, you've got to think about where they're watching content. And if you want to do a TV show, who are the names, the talent that they admire? What is the type of storytelling they're used to watching? So how are you going to emulate that? Because they're not going to come to a show that is catered towards much older people. They just don't, and I think we all know that. So on our shows, on, say, Masked Singer or Dancing with the Stars, we would cast always thinking about, if we want a broad audience, we need the heartthrob, we need a legend who's maybe hasn't been seen for a while, we need a young, up and coming soap star or boy bander. There's a category that we go through so that we're hitting every single demo in the search for a broad audience.
So if I take a step back from that, if you look at your career, you've been at the heart of creating some of the most amazing shows, strictly just to name one. And I think there's a backstory, which is you found Len Goodman just literally a couple of days before it all started. You probably need to tell us a little bit about that. But I mean, these shows are more than entertainment. I mean, part of common culture, popular culture. And so, and they obviously pull on lots of emotions. That's the emotional connection, isn't it? So what can marketing learn from the emotions that you pull on in producing these amazing shows?
I think really what all of these shows, all the shows that I've done certainly share a sort of a DNA in some capacity, which is that they take people on a journey. They take people, they're asking you from point A to point B to become something you haven't been before, right? So I'm asking you to, come on a show and put yourself out there in the most vulnerable way and dance a rumba, which you've never done before. And you know full well that you're going to be very exposed to criticism. You may not be a great dancer. You may never have danced. You're being asked to lay it all out there. And for the people who are authentic, they are the ones the audiences fall in love with. The people that try and produce themselves, which is very common, that never works, because of our perceptions and view of ourselves is actually never what it really is, right? It's never what people really are attracted to. But these shows are all about taking you on a journey. And I think with Strictly or Dancing with the Stars, it is the relationship between the celebrity and their partner, that it's a really real relationship that forms. It may not be one that's so great all the time, but you're really watching somebody fish out of water, go on a journey. And I think that is the key to anything. It is, if you want emotion, you really do need people to be vulnerable, and whoever is on your show to be vulnerable, and to talk about what universally relatable topics, right? We all know what it's like to try something new and hit that wall where you can't get good at it, or you're really worried about messing this one thing up. And that's relatable for everybody. And then you've got this narrative arc that's taking you through and making you want to come back the following week. So I want to see how that couple has done versus this couple, because I'm invested in them now. I've got to know who they are. So I think it's just story. Everything is story. I think we're all, with anything we do, it can be 30 seconds, it can be an hour. It has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Izzy, the thing that struck me as you were describing the relationship is a deep sense of human connection with the audience, right? Yeah. And I wonder, when you talk about Strictly as an example, where you've got perhaps a novice and professional teamed up, and I suspect the novice always has an edge of something of relatability to them. That's all intentional, I'm sure. It's all very, psychologically based. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about that, those tension points and how it then translates into, getting the most out for the audience.
I mean, we don't put people together by accident. To be really clear about that. We look at, so when we get our celebrities cast, we think, okay, let's cast for story. That's all we're doing. We're looking at story. So we'll say, this character here is this celebrity, very attractive, and we happen to know they are single, and we happen to know that they've had a rocky romance. Oh, well, we've got this dancer here who is also single. Or we might say, this particular celebrity is a little bit older than the others and really needs somebody who is going to give them patience and the support that they need in order to be able to pull this off in a way that nobody's laughing at them, because you don't want that. You don't want anybody to be laughing at anybody. I don't believe in that. So I think it's not why my value system is very against that. I think that, so we go, okay, how can we help this particular person? Because we know they're going to find this very tough. And then, you cast them with someone that is renownedly patient and good as a teacher. And then that relationship can become really heartwarming. And it can maybe reminds you of your relationship with your grandparents, or maybe it's a great teacher you had once. You're always thinking about.
But you're describing that as kind of being serendipitous. I mean, that's not planned for. You can't think about how that then works through over time. Or do you? Maybe you can. Maybe there is a formula.
I think we know. I think having done these shows for as long as I have, I kind of have a sense of people quite quickly. I do really deep dives into anybody coming on our shows. Our research levels are through the roof. I listen to everything they've ever done, podcasts. I will read books that they've written. I find out the things that are not public knowledge about somebody, and those are the things that I always hone in on. So it's the stuff that they don't talk about is the stuff that tells you about who somebody really is about as a person.
So you've just given a flavour of why you're really good at your job. And so it's not, the Strictly curse is not an accident. The Strictly curse is absolutely planned for in a way. We've kind of navigated ourselves into Act 2, which is, looking at the role of story and also of characters. And so I'm just going to jump straight in. Jerry Springer,
Yes.
unexpected. And so this is the story for marketing about perhaps the power of reinvention. Tell us a little bit more about what happened with Jerry Springer.
So Jerry Springer came on Dancing with the Stars very early on when we just, started the show there. And at the time, he was known as, grubby, kind of king of grubby TV. I mean, it was the shouting, screaming, DNA tests that were going on and Jerry, and he had his thought for the day at the end of the show, which was, I always loved and just thought that was something, that showed that he maybe had a bit of humanity. And he came on and I was not expecting him to be as warm and loving as he was, and genuine and self-deprecating. And there was one moment on the show where he ended up learning a dance in honor of his daughter, because she was going to be getting married soon and he wanted to be able to dance with her at her wedding and give her away. And he didn't, and it's given me chills, he didn't know how to dance. And so he was really vulnerable and open about the things that mattered to him, and nothing like this person that you had known on TV. He was nothing like that. In fact, he had very, very good relationship with his dance partner, who was much younger, Kim Johnson, and had been the sort of sex symbol, I think, in earlier seasons. But we knew her really well as producers, and she was one of the most down-to-earth, kind and patient and family-friendly people, actually, deep down. And so when we put them together, that is what she brought out in him, was this just genuine kindness. And people fell in love with this guy. I mean, he couldn't dance to save his life, but they really, really fell in love with him. And that was the point. It was surprising, I guess, for people.
Izzy, as you speak, right, there are so many parallels with the world of marketing. And it's kind of a bit uncanny when I'm just kind of thinking about this. I mean, when you talked about the role of intense research, ... marketing. You talk about the fact that this uncovering something special, insight. I mean, it's just, we can keep on going on with the parallels. And then Jerry Springer, what was surprising is exactly the kind of thing that we look out for as key marketers. So there's so many different ways in which to think about these parallels in our world.
I think so. And they're sort of merging more and more, aren't they?
Yes.
That's what's so interesting about it all. I think the biggest, character for me, though, the story of redemption through and through for me was T-Pain, or Monster, on Masked Singer, because that genuinely was probably a story that I have been more affected by than any others, because here was this man that was a rapper, and he was known as being this like auto-tune guy who, nobody knew he could sing at all. And he came on the show because he knew that nobody knew he could sing. And he was just like this hardcore rapper, and we had done such a deep dive into him and had realized there was an inordinate amount of pain in how he felt about the way that he was perceived. He really was genuinely hurt by it, by the public's perception of him. And this was a platform for him to be able to showcase that this guy had soul. I mean, when he sung, you were crying. We were all crying in the control room. Like, he had so much soul. And the panel genuinely never figured out who he was until his mask hit, till he won. He was funny. He was in a monster costume, and we just did all of these packages with him where he talked about being alone and a monster and being perceived by others to be a monster, and that juxtaposition with these beautiful, soulful tracks, stripped down tracks that he sung, meant that you fell in love with this character. I mean, had no idea who he was. None of the panel knew, and nobody knew. Even the host, Nick Cannon, didn't know. He had a guess because Monster kept kicking him and stuff, and because they go back a long way. So actually, Monster was messing with him quite a lot. But that story for me was when he won the show, it was the perfect winner. It was just, it really was, and it meant so much to him too.
So as you say that, you can see there's real emotion there. You say it affected you. Maybe to turn attention to you for a moment, which is that there's a give and get in what you do. I mean, it's high pressure, it's crazy chaos, instant decisions that make or break things. Tell us a bit about that give and get.
I mean, it's nuts. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. I usually run the live control room. So that's, say on Dancing, the height of Dancing, we were getting 20 million viewers twice a week. So I would do that Mondays and Tuesdays. And it's like being, I think the best of analogy I know is my former mentor, who unfortunately passed away, Richard Hopkins. He used to sit next to me in the control room, and he's the guy that sent me to America with Strictly, and was on part of the Strictly team from day one. And he used to go, "You're like a sort of mini cab operator," because I have a whole panel in front of you, and you're just kind of flipping between talking down the ear of the host, the panelists, the floor producers, who are the people that are then passing messages on to the celebrities and the talent, and every single head of department. You're talking to everybody, and you're also at the same time counting down live the amount of time for every segment. So if somebody chats for too long and you've allocated 1 minute 30 and they talk for 1 minute 40, you've got to find 10 seconds from somewhere else while that show is going on. And so you're then cutting out things, and we have background packages that are slightly shorter, just things like that. So you can come off exactly at the time that you have to finish the show at, and it's not sort of cutting off in the middle of a conversation. But there's endless amount of drama that goes on, as you can probably imagine.
I tell you what, first of all, I'm terrible at multitasking, so I can't even imagine what it must be like in that control room. Must be crazy chaoticness, and you must have to stay right on top of it, right top of your game, across all the unexpecteds. So the question that I then have is, what kind of, you must be cool as a cucumber. That must be one thing. But beyond that, what kind of skill sets would you have to be able to manage that environment? And by the way, how do you cultivate those skill sets?
I sort of fell into TV. So, my uncle was a producer, and I didn't fall into it, but he's a documentary producer, and he's incredibly smart and does very serious television. And so I had done an internship in New York when I was 18 for a show about the mafia, and had been told categorically not to fall in love with any of the mafia bosses, and promptly fell in love with the idea of Lucky Luciano, 1920s mafioso boss, and got sent to maximum security prisons to interview his former warden. I lived in Harlem, I worked on 42nd Street, and this is in the late 80s, so it was really rough but so exciting, And the thing I fell in love with was storytelling. That's the thing. And I think I did an English and German literature degree and had to write constantly, essay after essay after essay. And so that part of my skill set was probably the most developed, I guess, of any of the skill sets. But I had no training in television. I've learnt just on the floor. I've learned just by osmosis, actually, which has been really scary as well at times. My first ever live show, I'd never produced live before. And the executive producer, Phil Edgar Jones, at the time, we were on Big Brother. I think it was the first year of the live shows, the elimination shows with Davina. And he just left me in the control room and just went, off, just have a go. And it was like baptism by fire, but actually the best way to do it, because I don't know how I ever would have made it into that seat to run a show if you hadn't been just thrown in. Yeah. But now I know you can do courses and things in TV, but not back in my day. There weren't any.
So we have had 187 odd guests, and all of them have got a bit about them. And so often we talk about neurodiversity because we don't have average people on the show. No. You've talked about the fact that you think that's really at the heart of what makes you so good in those crazy moments. So tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so I think I am ADHD diagnosed, and I got a diagnosis 25 years ago. I know it's very trendy in England right now. It's kind of, I've noticed since I've moved back. But it had always been quite challenging for me at school. And, I wasn't someone who could sit in a classroom and listen to anyone banging on about, any subject. It just did not go in my head. And so my mother very brilliantly noticed that was what was up with me and sat at the dining room table opposite me and put her arms out and went, "I'm a uterus, darling. And here are my arms of fallopian tubes." And I literally went into school and understood the female reproductive systems for the first time, really, and got a B in my GCSE biology, and everyone was really blown away. And that was the moment where I started to realize I was a visual learner and terrible at exams. And then and so really those kinds of environments had always been challenging. And then I go into a live control room where it is chaos. There are, you're tracking story, the visuals, you're tracking host copy, your panel, what they're saying, everything can go wrong a million times. But for me, that's when I'm so calm and my brain can think across 10, 15, 20 different things happening at the same time. And it makes complete sense to me how I jump between them. There's nothing strange about that to me. It's, okay, I've got to do that, and then this, that, and then that link's there, and I see it. It's a pattern in front of me, and I have a natural order that I know I need to go in to address each of those things. And I can be speaking to 5 different people at the same time. It is no problem. And so, chaos is my friend. It really is.
Chaos is my friend. There's a line.
Yeah.
What about us, Richie? I mean, we're in chaos, but I don't know if it's our friend.
No, I can't say it is, actually. Actually, you're the more organized one than the two of us. So I probably live in a bit more chaotic world than you.
Maybe.
It's not good for everyone else around us, I will say. I mean, everybody teases me and it's like, you live your life as though it's a live TV show. So I leave everything to the last minute because if it's not happening right this second in my brain, it's not happening. Oh. So until it comes up round the corner and hits me here, it's just not happening. It's not on my radar. I don't think about that thing. If there's no pressure on something, it ain't happening.
It's quite interesting because, I mean, clearly in all the time we've been doing this, it's all now moved to a pre-recorded format. And it becomes far less pressurized than that live sort of environment. But yet, interestingly, we don't really do much editing. So it kind of is this sort of juxtaposition of just the fact that we know that it's just pre-recorded probably helps us kind of keep our pressures down. And
you remind me, Richie, so here's the scenario. Our very first show, we're interviewing somebody in Tasmania, and there's a power cut in Tasmania, the whole island, and we lose them for 18 minutes. And so we did some like crappy ad-lib, riffing. What would you have done live? We were doing it live back then.
Oh, you were doing it live? I would have had something lined up in advance.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh.
I'm afraid. Sorry.
No chance for that.
But I only say that because I have to do that for my job.
Well,
That's what I would have done. So in a way, what I would do if I were you guys, I'd be sitting there going, okay, what happens if a guest doesn't show up one week? Okay, so have we got something already in the bag that we can always throw out if we need it? Yeah. What if one of you is sick? What would you do then? Okay, I need to think about who my other host might be, and I'm going to have them on standby in case one of you guys gets sick and I can't record it. And then things like that.
Hey, there we go. We live and we learn, right? Act 3.
Yes.
Rising action, the mechanics of connection. We've talked a bit about, the thought about casting and targeting. But what I want to understand a bit more, or perhaps get a bit of inside juice around, you must have to deal with loads of divas. How on earth do you deal with that kind of stuff?
Oh,
painful?
Very painful, yes. One of the things you have to realise is that everyone on TV has got a fragile ego, obviously. And when you do an ensemble show where there are multiple celebrities, then everybody is very aware of one another's treatment, by the team and the crew of that person. So, you get a lot of people very upset that somebody else's song is a song that they would have liked to have sung, or I wanted to wear a dress that was that color, or it can run the gamut of things. And I think that the key thing that I try and always do is I run a show like a school is the best way to describe it, because usually on my shows there's about 300 people working on a show, and if you give in to one, you've got to give in to everyone. So if one person says, I'm not going to come to rehearsal on Tuesday because I don't want to and I don't need to. Oh, you're coming. Whether you like it or not, you're coming, because this is the ship we're running. Like, it's a school. And if I let you off, sure enough, I can tell you that by, tomorrow, everybody else will be asking me as well. And then the whole thing falls apart. So you have to go in, and I always send out a letter to every talent before they come onto a show, and I say, these are the rules of this show. So you are expected to be here. There is no, if you come on board and say yes, then you have to do X, Y, or Z. This is what the expectation of you is, and it's not an option to start shifting around. I had a screaming match with a celebrity's wife on Dancing with the Stars because that celebrity wanted to bring their child into the audience. And we had a rule that no one under the age of 16 was allowed into the studio. And this person's wife felt that her husband had been doing such a good job on the show and had been pouring his heart into it, and that their daughter should be an exception because she just should. And I was like, no, that's not happening. And it's probably the time that I've had the most heated argument really with anybody in my experience in a show. And it left me like shaking. But it was really, really important to me that we just upheld the rules and that everybody knew that there was no shifting. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I approach it.
Dealing with the divas.
But general lessons there for leadership more broadly in terms of clarity of expectations and holding your ground when it's important to. I wanted to go in a slightly different direction, which is I don't know if you noticed last week that Princess Catherine was caught necking a Guinness, or drinking a pint of Guinness.
Yeah.
And it absolutely blew up on social. Just pure luck. I mean, Guinness just lucked out. But you've got about creating moments that might explode in socials. How do you create those explosive moments?
We think about, you're thinking about, like when we had Sarah Palin on Masked Singer, very controversial figure that a lot of people did not like, and a lot of people that did, I guess. So we put her in a ridiculous costume, obviously, because that is going to be kind of surprising and not something you'd ever see her doing. And we had her rapping like Baby Got Back on stage. And, if that doesn't get attention, I don't really know what will. Or, after the Super Bowl, we had Lil Wayne on the show. And, the fact that he got unmasked straight after the Super Bowl, and his biggest rapper, huge following, you are thinking about those things all the time of like, how do we create content and storylines? And that's where formats can become so handy, because they are the rules you put around an idea. And it's kind of quite considered in that way of like, how do we push character from A to B to C to D? And they're always moving forward. So you're always ensuring there's a reaction or emotion. So, a format beat would be, this week everyone has to learn X. Okay, that's a format beat. We're going to, and you've got to do it, but you've got to do it in a ballad style. That's another thing that is going to create a reaction from the person who is having to perform. You're going to have to then stand in front of these judges, and the judges are then going to give you feedback, and there's going to be a reaction to every piece of feedback that you get. That's just an obvious story thing, isn't it? So you're always, and then you're going to, then these other people are going to perform. The order that people perform in affects them quite in quite a profound way. If you're the first, you're the best. If you're the first or the last, you're the strongest. If you're the second or the fifth, they know all of that stuff. And so that also will create reaction. Sometimes, sometimes you'll think about, okay, so-and-so's in the backstage area. If we put this performer afterwards, they're going to hear that performer, and that performer's really good. And then that one might make that person try. And so you're thinking about these things all the time, of like how to constantly, get moments out of people.
Wow, I tell you, there is no such thing as a coincidence in showbiz. Doesn't that seem like the way that it is?
I think I'd said on that talk, Mark, that you'd heard a few years ago that, there's something very serious about light entertainment. And that's actually really what it is. It's the amount of thought that goes into it. It may look like sort of fluffy light entertainment, but actually it's really methodical and quite serious behind the scenes.
I absolutely bet it is.
Yeah.
Tell us about maybe a time around when you're casting some of these sort of A-listers. Is it always quite straightforward, or what's the way that it sort of works? Is there any? Give us a bit of the inside scoop around this.
So it is a process that we all go through. So you start off with, we're going to cast Beyonce, and it's not where you end up necessarily, but you put people into categories. We have archetypes that we're looking for. So you're looking for your hero, your villain, your protagonist. You're looking for, the damsel in distress. That all of the classic stereo, story archetypes that you would have in fairy tales even. And then you're thinking about which demo that particular celebrity is bringing to the table. Who is their audience? Have you got your aging rock star in there or legend? Have you got your sports star, your current athlete? Have you got your athlete who's retired a long time ago? Have you got your, up and coming singer? Have we got an actress from a soap? Because that's a different demo. So you're always thinking in these categories. And so we tend to put pictures up of everyone. Everyone's got Velcroed head with their name under it, and then that gets moved around a board, and we have endless casting meetings. That goes on for about 2 or 3 months, before we start, really on pre-production on a show. So and the mix is what you're looking for. It's like, have you got the right mix? Have you got enough people that appeal to the audience that you're going after? And then also that have got great personalities, because you need that, obviously.
It sounds like it's properly a labour of love. But I want to move us on to Act 4, climax, as it were. So here, actually, I'm quite interested in your perspective on, you said before, TV advertising is maybe waning, or at least the amount of, investment that's going into that. I'd love to hear maybe an example you really rate of a brand that's absolutely killed it, applying some of the magic that you've come to know works.
Okay, the brand that I think that I have had my eye on for a while, and I don't know if this may be something that you guys talk about all the time, so apologies. But for me, Hot Ones is a brand. Do you know Hot Ones?
Oh.
Okay, it's a hot sauce brand. And what they have done is they created a TV show. They created a show on YouTube many moons ago where they invite celebrities onto the show and they eat chicken wings that get increasingly hotter every chicken wing that they eat. And this is a product line that I can buy as a consumer / audience viewer. I can then create user-generated content myself by buying the product, getting my friends to sit around, and we do the Hot Ones challenge. That content then gets, put on YouTube and all forms of social media. That to me is genius. And the guests that they have on Hot Ones are brilliant. They had like Gordon Ramsay sitting there the other day, sweating up a treat. He brought donuts and milk with him because he heard that was going to help him with the hot
misguided.
But it's an interview show that's done. It gets access to great names. They do it through this very simple thing. I think that's genius.
Like you and me, Richie, who can go hotter?
Absolutely, let's try it.
Yeah, you should.
Next time, guys, we're on it.
But what you say there, there's drama, there's suspense, there's character, there's
celebrity access.
Yeah.
It's everything. And then there's user-generated content. So you're getting all of your audience to do the work for you. Now, that's all very different forms of content, but that is a brand that I think I look at Hot Ones and I'm like, they're the one, they have got it right to me in today's content ecosystem. Like that's, and it doesn't cost them much to make that show.
Well, just, hot chicken wings.
Yeah. Lego's another one. Lego's done brilliantly well. Like the Lego Masters, the TV show, one of my favorite ever shows. They took the brand, they took Lego, and they've created a competition format that works really well. It encourages young kids to play with Lego themselves. It's about design and architecture. There's engineering. I mean, it's all of these things. I think that's super smart. I also did a project for Barbie last year and for Mattel, and came up with a big fashion award show for a big fashion show for Barbie. And that was a really interesting process to do. And when I started looking into the brand, I was like, this brand has got it so right. I mean, they have mentorship programs. They have shows on all forms of digital media. They have YouTube shows. They have stuff about designing homes. They take over spaces and give you an immersive experience. They are helping to encourage girls and boys, young boys and girls, to dream big. Yeah. You know, their clothes are a device for you to imagine your future career. That's what you're doing. You're trying on careers as a child, you know, like this idea. I was so inspired by it. And they celebrate excellence. They set all their role models for their brand and not the people you would expect them to be. You know, it's just, they are people who are just excellent, you know, and I loved that.
I too, by the way, really admired the Barbie story in that, and how they reinvigorate the characters over time. And interestingly, when you're talking about the Barbie movie, as of course, you know, a cultural zeitgeist, but they spent as much on the marketing as they did on the movie. Yeah. And that's telling in many regards, right? And something that we often forget, that these big productions, and Oppenheimer, I think, was probably the similar sort of category in that way.
Look at Severance right now. They're doing genius. You know, they're doing that. They had that thing in Grand Union Station where they had like the actors there in a glass box, you know, and you could go up and touch them. And, you know, that's what you want. You need to create these engaging experiences. That's what people want. That people want connection, and they want to be engaged with, and they want to experience and feel something no matter what it is. If you don't do that, then you're missing a trick. It's very one note, isn't it?
And that creates virality as well, doesn't it? Because that moment you said in Grand Central Station was one of the biggest social media sort of viral moments that happened as a consequence.
Right. Yeah, and Ben Stiller was down there filming, and then he's being filming but you know, that's really great. That's the three.
Are you telling me that's orchestrated, or is that just luck? I mean, what's the behind story you think on that?
I orchestrated.
You reckon?
Of course,
oh, man.
Of course.
Naive
question, Richard. Naive question.
I know, exactly.
So you obviously had a lot of success both sides of the Atlantic, which is often, you know, it's a thing, isn't it? How do people in Britain make it over there, and maybe vice versa? So I mean, many CMOs are thinking about, how do I make something work internationally with all that sort of cultural nuance and so on. So what would be your advice to CMOs thinking about, how do I create global impact, global emotional connection?
Well, you have to think about what is universally relatable. What are the things that we as people all share? You know, like we all have, I think that is the key thing with any kind of content that you want to travel. It's like, can somebody living on the other side of the world, will they relate to this idea? Will they relate to what happens within the idea? Is it something that is culturally relevant? Is it just an English thing, you know, or is this actually a universally relatable topic or emotion that we're trying to incite in people, I guess? So, you know, I'm always thinking, okay, you know, no, it's not relatable necessarily to go ballroom dancing with someone you don't know and go through a fish out of water. But the relatable bit is the fish out of water. And the relatable bit is the journey that these people go on, and the idea and the relationships they form along the way. Those are inherently relatable. So I think that's what you've kind of always got to be thinking. If it's too niche and too inner joke on, you know, us Brits, we do this, that doesn't travel. Unless you're very much taking the piss out of yourselves, then that might travel. But, you've got to then really look at very sort of stereotypes that everybody would say about a country. So I think it is really it's just about human story again. It all comes back to that. It comes back to how you're going to make your audience feel.
And when you decided to go and spend 20 years in LA and you're just back to the UK now, I mean, what was that experience like for you? I mean, what was it like culturally? How did it feel? What was the vibe?
I thought I was going for 3 months. So I went to the States thinking we were sort of on holiday, even though we weren't. We were launching a show. We did it, it was an adventure. But we hit a lot of cultural blocks really fast that I needed to learn really fast, which primarily in the States, we don't obviously talk the same language here. I mean, sorry, we do between America and England, but we don't at all. We make our audiences work in England. Like, we think they are smart. And so we don't ram information down their throat. We actually allow you to watch a show and to interpret the nuance. Like, you can sit at home in England and be watching a TV show and go, I really think that guy likes her. She really likes him. And he really, in the States, you're not allowed to do that. So you repeat information to the audience before they see it. You tell them what they're about to see. You then show what they've seen. You then have an interview bite that comes, after that reconfirms what it is that you want to see. And the same way that you'll notice in The Masked Singer in the US that there are millions of audience cutaways. And the audience cutaways, them clapping, cheering, whispering, looking, that is telling you the story of how you are meant to feel about that performance, and you would not get that in the UK. So there is the storytelling is completely different, and you have to hook your audience within the first 10 seconds. And if you don't, forget it, which is why, the cold opens for shows are so epic. It's also dramatic on steroids, because you're really oftentimes you'll have the cold open will happen before a commercial break. So you're really getting people like grabbed, from the get-go. And then there's just endless teasers and coming ups, and that is culturally so different. I think there's no room for nuance.
Well, they say that research has shown that from an advertising perspective, you have to try and grab them within the first sort of 3 seconds, and if you don't, you're off.
That's right.
But the vast majority of advertising today doesn't achieve that, and therefore you can almost say that the majority of advertising is sort of wasted in that respect.
I mean, we don't watch adverts, do we?
Well. Exactly.
We do everything in our power not to watch them.
I know.
And I remember back in the day, they used to get some really cool commercials. You'd get things that actually really enjoyed, watching. And do you remember the Nescafe? Was it Nescafe? Yeah, the romance that went on. I remember that so clearly. And that worked really well because it was a relationship, wasn't it? Long form, yeah.
I feel like it's a bit like Wizard of Oz. We're getting a sort of a view behind the curtain today through you and your insights. Lovely. We now need to move to Act 5, so resolution. On this one, you've moved from Hollywood to Hinkley Wood. So you've done your pivot recently. Tell us a little bit about how you frame the pivots of your life, if you like. You've talked about one, I went for 3 months and I stayed, but how do you think about pivoting?
I'm violently against the idea of pivoting. I think I like it to happen because there's a shift behind it. There's an energy behind it. So it has to make sense to me. And I think the only reason I say that about the word, it's the word pivot that I'm responding to, because in the States, that's all anybody talks about is pivoting constantly, because our industry has very much died in the States. Certainly TV is taking on a new form and is in a moment of transformation. But to answer your question, so Len Goodman used to always say to me, he used to go, you know what you're like, Izzy? He goes, you are like, in those rivers, right? And you've got water going down really fast, and there's a leaf and a branch, and it's just going this way and that way, and it's being taken with the current. He's like, that is what you are. Because I've never had a plan for anything. I just go with the flow and what interests me. And I think that what's happening quite naturally with me right now is I'm very interested in other industries around me, because I can see the way that audiences are behaving. And I don't want to be a dinosaur in an old way of doing things. I'm a forward thinker in terms of I get excited by the new creativity and new ways of working. That's exciting to me. So my career is pivoting at the moment, to use the word, but it's happened, I guess, in less of a purposeful way. It's happened as a sort of natural consequence of being curious and starting to look around and getting excited in other people's industries.
What would you then say to your younger self if you were trying to kind of look back on the years gone by and perhaps some insight as to how you navigate differently, the same, whatever it be?
I would tell my younger self to protect myself creatively more than I have done. I have not looked after the ownership of my work in a way that I should have done. Okay, because it's never been on my radar. I'm a creative through and through. I don't want to talk about money with people. I don't want to, negotiate my deal in a way that upsets anyone, because then it upsets my relationship with that person, and then that upsets my relationship with the project. So it has always been something that I have not fought for hard enough, and I regret that, because I've been involved in some of the biggest shows in the world, and I don't get it. I don't get anything of them. I was I'm showrun them. I've launched them from scratch. I've taken them from paper. And if I had been more, I think if I'd focused more on protecting myself financially around those ideas, maybe I wouldn't have done the same job, though. I mean, that's the other thing. I go into everything with a passion, and I'm an all or nothing kind of girl. You won't get 50% of me. You'll get 100% of me, whether you like it or not, or I won't do it. And I've done every project I've done because I am passionate about the idea. And that's been amazing on a soul level for me. But sitting where I am now, I realize, I look back and I go, Izzy, it's all well and good to be driven from a passion and creative place. And I'm really glad I have. I don't regret that part of me at all. And I don't regret the way I've worked. And I'm so lucky to have been involved in the things I've been involved in. But I think I've grown up recently and realised that I can be a bit of both. And I now approach my projects with a very strong team around me who do all of that for me, and it protects me. But I left it. I've always been a slow developer. So there you go.
What sound advice, honestly. It's really resonating.
You've got to look out for yourself.
We're coming up to the end of the segment, but I can't help but stick a little bit more on the technicals, because we're living in a bit of a YouTube age here. And I just wonder, if you've got any advice for people around this thought about keeping attention around long form content. What would be some of maybe we've covered a lot, I'm sure, but what are some of the key summary notes you would make in order to kind of keep an audience's attention for a long period of time, which is your forte, your expertise?
I think you've got to think about the story. So you've got to think about, there's no point partnering with an influencer on something who really is not authentically revealing about themselves, right? If that person hasn't got really a great story that associates with your brand, and you're going to go and do a YouTube thing with them, it's not really going to do anything for you. You have to think about casting in the way that I think about casting on a TV show, casting with purpose. I'd like to say that the shows I work on, there's programming with purpose. So, and in the same way, right, why do I want this person? Why do they make sense for me to make a show with? What are they doing on this thing? They can't just do gimmicks, because short form content, really, people move on from it very quickly. You're not going to get that much bang for your buck, are you, if you just keep doing little tiny stunts? What you're going to get bang for your buck on is people coming back and watching again and again and again. And they'll only do that if you're telling them a story. So I think that's really the biggest advice that I would have. I mean, okay, there's one influencer in America that I'm obsessed with, and she's a 52-year-old, very conveniently like myself, a 52-year-old shopping influencer who works with Amazon. This woman has just been in Forbes as one of the most successful women now. She, in the last 6 years, has gone from a stay-at-home housewife to being one of the most wealthy, powerful, and influential people. She's so unfiltered. I cannot tell you. I mean, this woman is beyond unfiltered. She wears more jewelry than me, which is not possible, really. And she tells you everything, warts and all, about her life. And it's not perfect in any way, shape, or form. And what she's done that's so smart is that she tells you what she's wearing every single day, and it's all from Amazon. So she's making a fortune on the side. I'm suddenly buying all my clothes on Amazon, which I have never done in my life until 2 years ago. And now everything I wear is from Amazon. She knows her audience. It's cheap. It's affordable. You can buy it right now. It arrives tomorrow. And she is, honestly, I think I look at somebody like that and I'm like, for Amazon, this person is genuinely just transforming their brand. Yeah. Because she has, I think, over 1 million followers that have happened in the last year. You know, I've watched her follow count on Instagram. It's just going up and up and up and up. She has a podcast. She's doing a deal with Expedia, I think it is. She's just done that. So she's done all of her, where she goes on holiday and all of those things. And it's just, and there is a story with her because she is sharing with you on a everyday basis what's happening, and you come back the next day to find out what's going on. And that's really smart to me.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Izzy. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thank you very much. I hope I've answered your questions properly.
Brilliantly.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to just keep talking to people in your worlds as well. So if anybody wants to talk to me, I would love to have conversations really with, I'm interested in what's happening and how we can all hold hands a bit.
Well, you heard it here, folks.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.